what I have found for myself is that by putting a lot of what's most important to me on my calendar, the time that is left forced me to become really resourceful, forced me to find the right people to help me, forced me to get over some of my beliefs, my limiting beliefs and things that were getting in my way, my big assumptions, as I call them. And so I find with my clients that starting with your calendar, starting with what's not working, starting with looking at all the places that you are focused and scattered in too many areas and making some decisions about that calendar helps us reveal what's really getting in the way, where the work really gets to be done. Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. This is the Conscious Edge podcast, and I'm Alicia St. Germain, entrepreneur and coach. Along with my friend and wellness advocate, Jonathan Duggar, we're diving into what it means to embody radical self-acceptance while still evolving to lead with compassion and kindness. We're sharing our own experiences and expertise as we unpack imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, and all the other things that lead to burnout and keep you from experiencing pure joy, business growth, and maximum impact. This is a safe and supportive space to explore what it means to be a human creating wealth and building a business. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Welcome back to this week's episode of The Conscious Edge. We are continuing the conversation around how you're spending your time, because if you are just joining us, one of the things that I've become very aware of is, and I don't know that I realized it before really stopping and reflecting on, is that so many people who are building their businesses, when they get to that point where they've achieved a certain level of success, sometimes they feel like they don't actually have the time to enjoy the life that they've created. They don't have the joy, the time to enjoy the freedom that they've created in having a business, and they really just have created another job for themselves. And so what I found, if you listen to last week's episode, what I have found is that I don't know that I knew I was doing it, but I really started to evaluate my life when I realized that I wasn't spending my time in the places that were most important to me, with the people that I wanted to be with, doing the things that I wanted to do, and making the impact that I wanted to make in the world. And so I really had to go through an entire process of clearing things off my calendar that allowed me to, number one, I had to deal with the emotional things. I had to deal with the fears and the worries and what people would think of me. And then when I started putting things on my calendar, like making time for the people that were most important and really being present with them and spending that time with them, putting other things on my calendar, which is what I was going to talk more about today. And then what I had to do was realize that there wasn't enough time in the day to do things the way that I was doing them and moving my business forward the way that I wanted to. It created a lot of clarity. It had me making a lot of hard choices. When you have too much time and you don't have that urgency, it doesn't force you to figure out how to do things in a better, more efficient way. And so one of the things that I do with my clients, this is based on my own journey as well, but one of the things I do is we start adding truly what makes life joyful and fun and fills them up, and spending time with people they enjoy. When we start putting all of that on their calendar, anything else that needs to be done for business building has to be figured out how to do it in the time that's left. And so when you're given a certain time frame to do something, you get really resourceful. You get really clear. You make hard decisions. You're forced to make those decisions, and you can't let things keep going and going and going and expending mental energy. So, like, one of the things that oftentimes happens, and this even, we'll talk about this in the corporate world, is like, let's say you have a week to do a project, and what most people will often do is if they've got a whole laundry list of things to do, they're going to do whatever's urgent, like whatever's most important. They're not going to prepare a presentation that they know that they could prepare the day before ahead of time because they've got this whole other laundry list of things that are more urgent. And so however much time you give yourself is exactly how much time you will take. So if you give yourself a week to get something done, you will take a week to get it done, generally. If you give yourself a day to get something done, you will get it done in a day. If you give yourself an hour to get something done, then you'll give it an hour. The problem is for business owners is sometimes you don't have the discipline to actually follow through with what you said and doing it by the time you said you were going to do it. And so if something else comes up, if you're not working ahead of where you really should be working ahead, and an unexpected occurrence comes up, then you start to run behind, you start to move projects, you start to delay your results, and you don't give yourself the space to work ahead so that you can implement ideas that you have come up as they come up. You're just in a very responsive way of being, a reactive way of being is what I want to say, as opposed to planning for growth, planning for the future. So what I have found for myself is that by putting a lot of what's most important to me on my calendar, the time that is left forced me to become really resourceful, forced me to find the right people to help me, forced me to get over some of my beliefs, my limiting beliefs and things that were getting in my way, my big assumptions, as I call them. And so I find with my clients that starting with your calendar, starting with what's not working, starting with looking at all the places that you are focused and scattered in too many areas and making some decisions about that calendar helps us reveal what's really getting in the way, where the work really gets to be done. And so the end results of working with your calendar, but then working through the mental and emotional aspects of what it's going to take to create that joy in your life, to bring all those most important things into your life. At the end of it, what you find is that you have a life that you're living that feels much more aligned to what's important to you. You find that you have a lot of joy and fulfillment. A lot of people who prioritized wealth as the most important thing that they have realize that not that they don't want to create the same level of wealth, but maybe their timelines, they're not willing to sacrifice. They're willing to let their timelines be a little bit longer so that the pace of growth is more conducive to life. And their overall well-being, wellness, joy, satisfaction goes up. And actually, their definition of success ends up redefined so that they can feel successful in the process of building the business and not waiting to feel successful when the business is functioning. Because oftentimes the goalpost keeps moving. You never truly get there. Like, you keep making new goals. You keep having new ideas. You keep creating. It's part of like what lights you up as an entrepreneur. So if we only look at our results as the sole thing that defines our success, or monetary wealth is the sole thing that builds our success, we never actually feel it. So that's the transformation that really we're looking to create. And I find that your calendar and the way that you spend your time is that gateway. It always has been for me in my journey. And so when you look at where you're spending your time and resources, that's a really good indication when your time and other resources are misaligned and being spent elsewhere from what's most important to you, that shows that there's a misalignment. So that's our gateway in. So last week I talked a lot about the relationships in your life and the people in your life. So I'm hoping that you spend some time and you actually, if you just connected with one person in a different way, like that will be such a success because there's such a ripple effect through that. But I want you to really be thinking about those people in your life. And so the other thing that I did, so if you didn't listen to last week's episode, I had this realization with my daughter who was screaming upstairs, having a night terror, and I wanted to be there. And I was down here and I was in my office doing something else. I'm training people and I didn't want to do it. Like I didn't want to do that anymore. So I overhauled my life. And so the other thing that I started putting back on my calendar that I had not been doing was I started looking at what experiences I want to have. It was so fascinating. The more I have practiced mindfulness and the more that I have been present in every moment, it was the weirdest thing. I was cutting vegetables the other day and I was thawing shrimp. Of all the places to have this breakthrough, right? I'm thawing shrimp. I'm like, okay, I'm going to practice mindfulness in this moment. And so I'm feeling how cold the shrimp feels on my fingers. I'm feeling like what they feel like. I'm thinking like I'm just super present with preparing dinner. Overall theme. I'm super present. And there's an episode on mindfulness where Jonathan and I talk about specifically how do you practice mindfulness. So we're big on practicing what we preach. And so that has been a big thing in my life, is really talking about being present and being aware of my feelings, being aware of my body, being aware of my senses. And I have found that my attention to detail, my productivity, my thoughts, just everything has become so clear and interesting. And so as here I am touching the shrimp, like the cold shrimp in my hands, and I'm thinking about the cold shrimp. And all of a sudden this idea floats into my head about the meaning, like the purpose of life. Like what is the purpose of life? And Jonathan and I talk a lot about purpose. I do soul purpose readings where we look at like, what's your soul's purpose here? Like, how are you here to serve humanity? But like this idea of what is the purpose of life? And I don't know if it was my voice, my soul, God, I don't know. But this voice in my head says to experience it, to experience it. The purpose of life is to experience it, all of it, the sad moments, the happy moments, the beauty of the world, the ugliness of the world. It's just to experience all of it. And when I had that realization, it was profound. It like hit my heart. It's just that simple. We make life so complicated, and the purpose of life is just to experience it. There's a reason this podcast is all about redefining wealth as a whole human experience. I didn't really realize it when I named it that, but these are these little magical moments that I always tell my clients, look, there is stuff in the world I cannot explain. There is like magic in the world. There is like some hands, something else bigger than myself in this world that I cannot explain. But the synchronicity of it and the way that it all fits together and the way that it flows is in my, like, I would call it magical. It's just takes my breath away, takes the words away. And so one of the things that I did on my calendar was I asked myself, like, what do I want my experience to be like every year? So I think about who are the people that I want to have in my life and what do I want my year experience to be like? So for me, I love the holidays. I mean, pretty much from the point that Halloween hits, which is the best way to kick off a holiday season, all the way through till January 1. That is like my favorite time of year. I love it all. I love festivities. I love entertaining. I love decorations. I love celebrations. It is all, to me, like what the year is all about, because there's family and people connecting over delicious food and so much just joy. It is just joy. If I had to be like one of my all-time favorite movies is Inside Out. I think it's my favorite movie. Don't tell me if you've seen the new one. I haven't seen it yet. I cannot wait. But hopefully by the time this airs, I've seen it. But like joy, just love joy. And I love that part of the season. And so I looked at my calendar and I said, what do I want my experiences to be? So one of the things that I do in my business is I enroll, like I do an open enrollment, like a launch, really, essentially, where I tell everybody about my program. I'm telling people what's involved in working with me. Like it's just this big campaign to bring people into the exponential entrepreneur. But I want that wrapped up by Thanksgiving, because that extroverted energy, that energy that I'm putting out there into the world, I want to bring that into my holidays and have that time to prepare and be with my family and host. And I want to be focused. So whatever I'm doing, I want to be 100% focused on it. And I know when I'm in that campaign to bring people in and let them know how to work with me, that I want to be able to be really focused on that. So I plan my business to wrap that type of energy up there by Thanksgiving. So as you're listening to this, if it isn't already, there is likely a open enrollment period coming where it's the perfect time to join the Exponential Entrepreneur. If you've been thinking about getting a coach and you've been listening to me for a while and you think that I might be that person that can help you to create that enjoyment in your business and help you get really focused and help you be able to grow your income where you want it to be without you having to do more things and hate the process. Like it's supposed to be fun. If you're going to do it, why not let it be fun? So if you've been thinking about that, it's very likely that as this is coming out, that's partially what's happening, because I think this is scheduled to come out sometime in October. So I wrap that up so that I can be only focused from Thanksgiving until January 1. The only thing I want to do is I want to focus on pouring into my current clients and my family. Like, because my clients, like, we have a very close-knit connection. And so I want to be connecting with the new clients that come in, supporting them, getting them off to a really good start. And I want to be fulfilling them. And I want to be decorating my house and Christmas shopping and preparing meals for different holiday parties that we're having. And that's all I want to do. And then every year, my family takes a camping trip in July. In July for a week, we go away camping. There is no tech. So that's on my calendar. So what I'm saying or suggesting here is that you go through and you think about what experiences are really important to you and start planning your business around those things happening. One of the things I realized this year, so this past year, I did a summit in May. So I had a summit launch in May. And summits take a lot from me as well. Just they're very similar in energy to the enrollment campaign, right? So when I am doing a summit, I'm putting all of my energy and focus there. And what I realized this year, so I always go back with my calendar, is I start thinking about what worked from this past year and what do I want to do differently next year. And I realized that launching in May does not work for me because this is a time of year when my kids' school is actually wrapping up all their school year. And so a lot of times they have field trips that I would love to be chaperone on. They have other performances and things that happen outside of the school day. It's kind of their end of the year stuff. So I wanted to be able to be there. And I found myself having to reschedule things and move things around, and it made it very stressful. So I was like, okay, next year, I actually need to do my enrollment period at a different time where basically I'm wrapped up in May. I'm not doing it in May. So the other thing that was really interesting is my garden really suffered. My husband actually had a work injury. And so usually he helps me with the garden. He wasn't able to do that this year. And so our garden was so pathetic. It was like, he did his best. I was out of town. It was so funny because he did not realize that when I buy my basil plants, I get one pot and I look for one that has 3 or 4 basil plants. And then I separate them out and put them in the garden. He thought I bought 3 basil plants every year. So he comes home. He's got now 9 basil plants. So the only thing that actually grew successfully in my garden this year is basil. And I have basil coming out of my ears. So much pesto, right? But it didn't get gardened. It didn't get weeded properly this year. The plants got put in late because we put them in here in May. And so I was launching. So the plants didn't get planted till June when he actually was feeling better and could do it. So I realized I really love to garden. I love to grow food and tend to the garden and weed it. It is going out there every day and checking on my garden is such a joy for me and such a great way to transition from my workday to my just cooking in the kitchen and taking care of my family, which is something I love to do. So the other reason that I don't want to do lots of business activity in May is because I want to be able to put my garden in on time. So I start planning now in my calendar, proposed planting weeks. So we can't plant till Mother's Day weekend. So I have right now in my calendar for May 2025, time set aside for putting my garden in. So that instead of me wanting or wishing to do that and then running out of time because I have all these other things I have to do, I put it in my calendar now. All the things that bring me joy, all the experiences I want to have, any conferences that I particularly love to go to. I love to go to InvestorCon every year. That's one of my favorite real estate conferences for women. It's already on my calendar. That's on there. My monthly mastermind that I attend every 3rd Friday with my local girls, my local friends who support each other in our businesses. That's every Friday. So anything that I want on my calendar as a regular thing or a part of my planning, I put it on my calendar. Now, for my people out there who are spontaneous, who are I don't like to be this scheduled. This feels very constricting. Let me tell you, in order for you to have freedom, I call it a rhythm instead of a structure for my people who like to be spontaneous. This rhythm that you are creating in your calendar actually creates more freedom. Because what happens for people who like to be spontaneous is they don't actually put important things on their calendar. They don't give themselves a space to do things that actually have to be done. And then they're like, oh, let's go do this. This sounds like fun. What happens is they don't have enough space in their calendar to do anything but be reactive. Constantly reactive. And then it's always a constant state of high cortisol and you don't move forward on your goals to where you want. And all of a sudden you've lived this very spontaneous, lovely life, but you still don't have in your life the things that you wanted to have because of this rebellious piece that you might have where structure means not free. And that belief is not serving you. So again, the calendar, it even exposes those places where you're resistant to putting that rhythm together. There's nothing in my calendar that says I can't change all of these things I plan forward. There's nothing that says I can't change my mind and plant the following weekend if it's super rainy. I'm just setting the intention. This is really what this calendaring is all about, is about setting the intention first. So I look at like all the things, the experiences that I know are happening, that happen every year, that I want for the rhythm of my life. And then the other thing that I paid attention to was I looked at when I function best. So if you remember, I was training at night. And then what would happen is that because I was amped up at night, I was staying up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I have kids. My kids get up at 7 without fail. Like between 6:45 and 7:30, I can count that my kids are going to be up. So I've got to be up and getting them ready for school or whatever. So going to bed at 3 is not good for me. That's not good for my lifestyle. I might be a night owl, and that might have been great before I had kids, but that does not work for me now. And so anything that I do, if I work, I have noticed that if I work at night, like after 4 p.m., I get my kids off the bus, we start dinner, we have family time. If I go back to work after my kids go to bed, I get into a zone. I get a second wind. And then I stay up really late and I don't get enough sleep. And that's not good for me, even though I like to work at night. I don't like how I feel when I haven't had enough sleep. And a tired mind is hard to manage and it makes it really difficult. So I have learned that even though I like to work at night, it actually doesn't serve my bigger purpose. And it doesn't serve me and it doesn't serve my family because nobody's getting the best of me when I'm exhausted. So I don't work after 4 p.m. unless it's like absolutely necessary. There's some kind of reason that it couldn't get done during the day, but there's very few things that cannot wait until tomorrow morning. And so what it has done by putting these boundaries in place for myself, it has forced me to make sure in every single day that I work that I am focusing on the most important things, that I'm not getting lost in rabbit holes. I'm not doing things that feel like busy work. It's also forced me to get really clear on places that I have resistance and places where I might have some big assumptions that are causing me to behave in a counterproductive way. I've got to go in and I've got to figure out and clean that up as to why I can't move things more forward, where I don't let myself make excuses. I look at why is this happening and I dig into that. So I've learned that I don't do well if I have to take appointments before 10 a.m. So I take appointments between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. And I put a majority of my appointments with other people on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now, this is how I run my life. When I work with my clients, we look at what we are constantly testing and looking at what works for you and what doesn't work for you. I don't take any client appointments the last week of every month. So that allows me to make sure I can schedule doctor's appointments, fun with friends. It gives me creative time to record podcast episodes. It gives me time to be able to plan the retreat that's coming up. If you don't know anything about the retreat, you might want to go back and listen to that episode on how we're doing with the retreat. We'd love to have you. So I use that time in the last week of the month for all that creative stuff, for taking care of myself. If you're never having any space on your calendar where you can predictably know that you could schedule a doctor's appointment, then you might not be taking the best care of your body and your body suffers. This is your artist's tool. This is your tool to do good work in the world. So if you're not giving yourself a predictable space where you know, like I know I can go to my doctor, get on the phone with them and say, okay, last week of the month, I have a lot of flexibility. What's available? So it really helps me plan into other people's schedules too by having that time freedom. Now, maybe that's not going to work for your type of business or what you do in business, and that's okay. Maybe that looks like Fridays. Maybe that looks like Friday afternoons, whatever it is, that having that predictability will be helpful for you. So we look at When is the best time for people to be on your calendar? When is it that you're going to have time to take care of yourself? And what doesn't work? So my habit is that if I work late, I'm going to violate what's good for my body. So it's starting to put some of those boundaries in place that we know are going to make it work better for you. So what happens sometimes is people feel like, well, I have all these limitations now. Like, I can't make the money that I want to make. And that's not true. It causes you to have to get more selective in what you're doing. It causes you to be creative and find out new ways. Like, one of the things that I do is I have a very limited number of one-on-one clients. Essentially, if you work with me one-on-one, I've got 4 spots that are available. And if all those spots are full, then you have to wait. I've got like 8 spots for semi-private. Like, that's where someone is like in my group and participating in my group program. And then they like to meet with me once a month for private. There's only 8 spots. If those are full, you can't have it. A majority of my clients work with me in the group program, because that's how I maximize my time. So this is all about looking at what you do in different lenses and figuring out different ways to spend time doing what you most enjoy, that has the most return on investment for your time that you are putting in, being very selective, hiring support. And just a couple episodes ago, I talked about the things that we do that actually get in the way, like why we maybe have challenges with hiring support or automating things or whatever it is. There are many things that we can do to create more time. There's lots of strategies for creating more time. But what happens is, because people have these big assumptions about the way the world works and the way that they work in the world, this is what keeps them from effectively using the strategies. But when we start to limit down the time that you have, it's going to get really uncomfortable. And so when the discomfort of where you are becomes greater than the discomfort of changing the behavior, you'll change. You'll be motivated to change. And so when we start to approach it as creating a lot more joy and things that you love to have in your life, you're not going to want to give those up. And I know that there's ways for you to work through being able to have both, but not in the way that you're functioning right now. Not if you keep doing what you've been doing that has you overworked, stretched too thin, doing everything yourself, and not having good boundaries, but like not having good ways of operating that work. And sometimes that means like telling people when they can get on your calendar and when they can't. It doesn't mean I can't be flexible. It doesn't mean I can't decide, oh, I really want to connect with this person. I'm going to do it outside of when I would normally work because I really want to connect with them. These are my filters for making sure that everything that is on my calendar is important to me. And anything else that needs to get done, either it doesn't need to get done and I let it go, it's not important to me, or I figure out a different solution. And then I do the mental work, I do the brain work that needs to happen so that I can be the leader that makes that happen. That puts me in control of my calendar. So I hope that over the last couple episodes, you've got some realizations around your time and what it really means to be in control of your time, and are taking actions to make some of those changes. And of course, I would love to support you with that. We are entering into an open enrollment period, just as I told you. So now is the perfect time to be looking at joining the Exponential Entrepreneur, getting yourself set up for the most fantastic 2025. I would love to be the one to support you with that. And so I really encourage you to go to consciousedge.com/apply and reach out to me, and let's see if this is a good fit for you, if this will support you in hitting your goals. Because what I know is that life is far too short to not enjoy the journey, because I really, truly believe the purpose of life is to experience it, all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, and learn from it and leave a contribution to humanity that makes a difference. That is a fulfilling life. That is who I want to be in the world, and I want to invite you to join me on that journey as well. So with that being said, I am sending you so much love. Looking forward to my partner, Jonathan, getting back to us. So for him, I'd say, be well, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.